Okay, we are up to Mishlei 1610, and this is a weird one. Yeah. Kesem al sifsei melech, comma, b'mishpat lo yimal piv. Difficult to translate as well. Anyone want to give it a try? We don't have Isaiah here yet. If not, I won't hold it against you. But I gotta give it an
I could try
opportunity.
the first half.
Sure, go ahead.
So, is it divination on the lips of a king?
Okay, good. And I'm just curious, if you had not seen divination, is there a way you would have translated it?
I think like magic or
Okay, I
something.
also would have translated it as magic. I do think divination is the correct explanation. I'll show you why. So I'll put magic here anyway. Magic on the lips of a king. Okay, and then this last part is hard to translate. Mishpat lo yimal piv.
Injustice,
Oh, sorry. Hold on just a
his
second.
mouth, okay.
Analysis notes. Yeah, sorry. Injustice.
His mouth will not, and I don't know what all means exactly.
Yeah, mi'ila. So here we have uh to act unfaithfully or treacherously. So how do you translate that as a verb, as a single verb if you can?
I was gonna say be unfaithful, but that's not. Or
That might be fine. Not be yeah, be unfaithful or I think betray might be the more common word for being unfaithful. Um okay, so let's try this out. Okay, now you're gonna see okay, yeah, whatever. We'll see. So Metzudas Tion says kesem is inyan nichush kosem ksamim. Okay. So kesem means anyone want to translate nichush? You got to know your types of occult practices here to get the difference between kesem and nichush. So nichush is omen reading. Okay. So he says kesem equals nichush, which is omen reading. Okay. And in fact, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and use the transliteration here because this is going to be a term. Kesem. Yeah. Okay, fine. And then I'm just going to translate mishpat. Justice, his mouth will not betray it or be unfaithful. Okay, fine. All right, Sadigon has a very different translation. He says, "Sarich shiyehe hamishpat hamechukam v'hamuchlat al sifsei melech." So the wise and definitive judgment needs to be on the lips of the king. Uva mishpat lo yimsa mal b'dvarav, and injustice treachery will not be found in his words. So that is Sadigon's translation. Now remember, Sadigon basically what he did was he took the Hebrew and then he translated it into Arabic. And whenever you translate, you have to have, you have to make decisions. So just like when we translate. So Kafech, who's the translator, comments and he says, Tirgum kesem hatam, v'hu adavar hamechukam v'amuchlach ein lazuz mimena. So he says, Sadigon translated kesem as some Arabic word, hatam, which is a wise and definitive statement that one cannot budge from. Gezerah chaluta she'en lefachvek ba, an absolute decree that cannot be doubted. And then he compares it to pasuk and Shmuel. Okay, so that's how he translates it. I don't know what to do with this targum. I'm just going to read it. Kisma al sifavase demalka uvedina los nidgul pume. Don't know what that means. I'm going to go ahead and just ignore it here. I'm going to move this up. Okay, Art Scroll says there is a charm on the lips of a king. In judgment, his mouth will not deceive. All right. I don't know how I feel about charm. I see where they're getting it from. Charm to me implies like what you do with a snake or what you do like, I don't know, like to, entrance someone. Whereas Kesem, so strictly speaking, Kesem is like divination where like if you were okay, there's a Torah prohibition against Kesem about against divination, and it's prohibition to engage in any sort of activity that puts you into a trance that makes you or that in hopes of seeing the future. Okay, so charm, I just don't think omen reading I'd be fine with, but charm I feel like is too far removed. Rav Hirsch says a magic rests on the king's lips, therefore let his mouth not sin in judgment. Okay, Alter says there's magic on the lips of a king. His mouth won't betray in judgment. Okay, so let me do this. Let me just put this into the chat so we can have all these translations here. And in fact, I'm going to move this up as well. Actually, let me do this. Hold on. Let's move the Metzudas David, Metzudas ציון up. Okay, so first in the chat, we will have the pasuk and our translation. Okay, then we will have these 4 translations. There we go. Okay, and I'm actually just going to move this up so we can keep everything out of the way, and you have the chat now. Okay, so what are the questions here? Like I said, strange pasuk. Yeah, Rifki.
Are the first half and the second half related? Like, I feel like I don't really see like a connection between like Kesem being on the lips of the king and then like how that relates. It seems like a good thing, like the way it relates to justice, unless I'm standing, which I wouldn't assume.
Right. Oh, you know what? I have to give a what do you call it? Cultural reminder. Okay. So when we think of king, we automatically think of government. Okay. But in the ancient world, what other role did the king serve other than governing?
Like a deity for, well, certain people.
Okay, that's true. I guess even in our kings, what role do the king serve other than
Well, in England, the king was part of the was one of the rulers, or not one of the rulers. Hold on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm trying to say, like, other than ruling over people, then what else did the king do?
Exacting justice, keeping order.
Okay, in what way though?
I was thinking of like in terms of like if someone's disobeying, he'll like do executions
Okay,
or
so that's
jail.
definitely true, and that's what I would think of. But there's another role. Think Shlomo HaMelech, and the famous story that demonstrates his wisdom.
Judgment, like the baby, like deciding disputes.
Yeah. So what do we call a person who does things like that?
Judge.
Judge.
Okay, right. So the king was the judge. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's why I wasn't sure, Ayala, what you were getting at. And I was reminded of this by Rashi. We usually don't do Rashi in general. We also don't do Rashi this early. But he says, Al Sifsei Melech, Al Sifsei Chacham HaYoshev Bedin. Okay, so he doesn't even take, Rashi doesn't even take king as a like monarch. He just says it's someone who is in the capacity of king, which is someone who's judging. Okay, so I'm actually, just in order to remind us about this, I'm going to go ahead and translate this as Melech, but I'm going to put judge in here also. Okay, and again, that's an unusual move on my part because, you know, I would usually just translate it and not incorporate the interpretation, but because this was a rule of kings, then we have to remember that. Okay, so how are the first and second halves related? Is what Rifki's asking, and the reason why I thought of this now is because I think once you know that the king is a judge, the second half is clearer in terms of its relationship to the first half, even though it's not exactly going to answer it. So, like, you know, are these opposites? You know, is this one like, I don't know, case? I don't know how to say it. Yeah, Isaiah?
I guess, like, why are we talking about a king? Like, why? What's his role in this?
Okay, so I guess let's just broaden. I don't know if this is what you're asking, but let's just broaden this to the question of what is the subject matter of this pasuk, and what is the decision-making scenario. Okay, clearly it involves a king, but what, you know, what in what capacity? Yeah, Ayala?
Are these like prescriptive things of like the Kesem should be on the lips of the king and his mouth should
Okay.
not
That's a
betray?
great question. Is
or
this
descriptive?
pasuk, right? Is this pasuk prescriptive or descriptive? Okay. So just to spell out what that means, is it prescriptive, which means you know, a kesem should be on the mouth, on the lips of the king, lips of a king, etc. Or descriptive is factually speaking, kesem is on the lips of a king. And you see, I don't know if this is where you got the question, but Sadigon took a hard stance on that, saying in the prescriptive, right? It needs to be on the lips of a king. Okay, next is my dad.
Why this focus on lips and mouth?
Yeah. What why focus on lips and mouth? And then I'll add here, are these synonyms or is each one appropriate to its half of the pasuk? Yeah, Reza?
Once magic is on the lips of the king, is it like a blanket statement for his whole life? And is there ever a time when it's not?
Okay, that's a good question also. So what
Statements?
under, I guess, let me just think about how to say this. Is kesem on the lips of the king, inherently, or only under certain conditions and times? And if the latter, what are these conditions and times? Yeah, Rivki?
So I know we're saying that his mouth won't betray and like justice, judgment, all of that, but what does that actually mean? Like, does that mean in any judgment? Is it talking about specific cases?
Yeah. Okay. What is the mishpat? Yeah, actually, you know what? Judgment is also a good translation. Okay, so what is the mishpat in this case? Is this all, I don't know, all in all situations of judgment or in a specific situation? And then I think also implicit in your question was like, what? I mean, this is one of those questions where like, what is it saying? Like, what is it, but like I maybe I'll just say this. What does the second half mean? What does each half mean on a simple level? What does each half mean on a simple level? I know you really want to ask that, but like, it's just, what is it? I don't know. I don't even know where to go. Yeah, I mean, Rabbi Moskowitz definitely had there were certain psukim where I know Ariel's a fan of this question as well. Of like, we read it, and the question is, what the heck is it talking about? And that's like I feel like this is one of those psukim. Yeah, Ayala?
Also, more specifically, what exactly is kesem?
Yeah. Okay. So we didn't
What
ask
does it
that
mean?
yet, right? What is kesem? And I'll even say, like, is this, I mean, I hate to say, is it literal? Because I don't think it literally means magic, but I guess, I mean, okay, guys, we're assuming it's a mushal, but let me think about it for 1 second. No, actually, I'm going to ask this. Is this literal or figurative? Okay. Now, you might think it can't be literal because we don't really, well, all right. Background information. There's a big machlokus. Everyone holds that the Torah prohibits magic and occult practices. Big machlokus basically between the Rambam and the Ramban on whether magic is fake or whether magic is real. So the Ramban and crew hold that magic is real, and Rambam and crew hold that the magic is fake, and it's all illusion and trickery and psychology. So Rambam would definitely not take this literally, but I suspect even the Ramban, like, is the Ramban really saying like all kings have magic lips? Like, it's very hard to think that. And then on the other side, you could say maybe if Kesem means divination, and divination means like telling the future, it's figurative, but like maybe there's I don't know, maybe there's a literal understanding. I don't know. So either way, what does it mean? Yeah, Reza?
What defines a king, and does this refer to an appointed king or judge or a metaphorical king?
Okay. Okay, good. So where are we going to put this one here? Let's put this here. What does king mean in this context? So first of all, is this a literal king? A literal king, okay? Or does it refer to a judge? I guess, is this a literal king, a judge, or something similar to those two categories, but broader? Okay. And so, for example, and this is just something that the way that we approach Mishlei in general when we see a pasuk about a king. So, like, if king means judge, then like you see, our Rashi said that it's any chacham who's sitting in judgment. Or many times we see a pasuk that it's about a king and really means any person in a position of authority or power. So that's what I mean by broader. But I think we'll keep it this way for now. Yeah, Rivki.
So I know we're saying like he's somehow involved in like magic or whatever, and he's also involved in judgment, but what is he doing here? Like,
Yeah,
what are his
right.
actual actions?
So
Are they applicable for him, or is this also like for us?
what is the king doing here? Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a good question also, which is, who is the audience of this pasuk? The king or someone else? Right, yeah. Ayala?
I'm not really sure exactly how to ask this question, but or if my grammar reading is correct, but it seems like yim al is like a action or like a
Yeah.
something versus like the first half of the pasuk seems to be lacking.
Yeah.
And like it's just like a thing. It's not like a
Yeah,
sentence,
exactly.
I guess.
Yeah, so that's
So
why I would put in the word is. Okay. So that does address the grammar, but it's still a good observation that the second half has a verb and the first half is just describing reality. So we can ask that stylistically. We can say, like, is there a reason why only the second half mentions an action? Yeah, Ben?
Yeah, so I was also gonna focus on the word, like, what kind of me'ilah is this? And
Yeah.
like, my understanding of me'ilah in halacha is like when something is dedicated for one purpose and then somebody uses it for a different purpose that wasn't the intended purpose, right? So,
Okay.
right, so what would it be like if somehow either the kesem or the lips were like using the king's judgment
Yeah.
for something
I'm gonna
else?
put in the Hebrew word here also. Ma'al is betray or be unfaithful. Yeah, okay. So the question here is what does me'ilah, okay, betrayal or treachery mean in this context? Okay, so I just want to actually, before I fill out the rest of the question, I just want to look on the BDB dictionary again and just see what else they say here. Oh look, they quote our pasuk here. Yeah, so what Ben is pointing out is typically it's a very weird word, me'ilah. ArtScroll always translates it as treachery or trespass. The primary meaning in Chumash, I believe, is when you have something that is designated usually for a holy purpose and you use it for some sort of mundane purpose or contrary to its designation. But apparently, okay, again, I'm only going based on this. Later on, it's used for like betrayal in general, or betrayal against God in general. So the question here is, I'm just going to add to this now, is this intended in the the Chumash usage of misusing sanctified property, or is this a broader reference to betrayal of God, or even a broader sense of betrayal, which I have no idea whether, like, in English when we use betrayal, we automatically think of like trust and interpersonal relationships, but I have no idea if this is if they use that in this way, because usually we have a word in Mishlei also, bogade, which means a traitor. Me'ilah is a very like holiness laden word, like Ben was pointing out. Okay, what else? I mean, I kind of want to understand what are the consequences here, right? Which is part of the decision-making question. But let's just say here, I'm going to put this question up above. What is each half saying on a simple level? And then what are the consequences? What are the consequences here? Okay, this is the i.e. so what? Yeah, Rifki.
This might be included in another question, but I'm also wondering, like, how does Kesem get there? Like, I just feel like it's not like a natural.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to tack that onto Race's question: is Kesem on the lips inherently, in which case we wouldn't have to ask that, or is it under certain conditions and times? And if the latter, what are these conditions and times, and how did the Kesem get there? Right, because if it's an intrinsic quality of the king, then it'll come about however the king became king. Yeah. Okay, are we sufficiently confused? All right, I think I do want to ask one more question. Similar to what kind of king? I guess similarly, does this refer to any and all let me put this way. Similarly, sorry, regardless of how we define king, does this apply to all kings or only to certain, kinds of kings? Okay, for example, righteous, wise, powerful, or is this just a quality of king in general? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the questions into the chat. See if these will fit. Yep, those fit. And then let's go with 8 through 14. Got to change all the numbers. 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12, 13 and 14. Okay, so let us have our thinking minute. See what we come up with. And by the way, I usually don't fully prepare for this year, but usually I at least skim the commentators that I copy and paste, but I really did not have that much time this evening. So we're kind of on our own here. I mean, we have the meforshim, but I have not paved any paths here. Oh, one more question. Okay. Actually, let me just read this here. His mouth won't betray. Okay, let me just read the pasukim that we've done. Okay, so just to point out here, the last pasuk we did also had to do with mishpat. Oh, sorry, 2 pasukim ago. Tov ma'at bitzdaka mirov tuvos below mishpat. Better a little bit with righteousness than a lot of produce without justice. Then Lev Adam Yachashev Darko Hashem Yachin Tzado. The heart of man plots his way, but Hashem establishes his footsteps. Then we have our pasuk. Then we have Pelos Umozne Mishpat Lashem Ma'asehu Kol Avne Kis. I don't know exactly how to translate this. I think a weight and scales are a judgment to Hashem, and his action is every stone in a pouch or stone of a pouch. Then we have To'avas malachim asos resha ki pitzdaka yikon kise. An abomination of kings is the doing of wickedness, of evil, because with righteousness his throne is established. And then ritzon malachim sifsei tzedek v'dover yishayim ye'ahav. The favor of kings is righteous lips, and one who speaks upright he will love. And then you've got another king pasuk here. Okay, so it's so our pasukim are aligning with election season is basically what's going on here. If king is a ruler. So my question here is, I'm just going to put this here, even though we don't usually ask it, which is this connected at all to the surrounding psukim? Okay, Rif, do you have a question or do you have an idea?
Like a question, comment.
Sure.
Just in general, like when he writes about a king, and we obviously know he was king.
Oh, that's a good point.
Fit into that, like it's a very interesting point.
That is a good point. So the funny thing is in Koheles, whenever he talks about a king, it's definitely like biographical. Like many times it's biographical. Here I have not seen. It actually surprises me now. I've never thought about that question before. I don't, except in the last chapters where it seems to be talking about a specific monarchy. I don't really see people commenting and saying that this is about Shlomo. But let's ask it anyway. Is there any biographical angle to be learned here? Yeah. Okay. And then my dad has his hand up. Do you have a question or a idea?
An idea.
Okay, so let's we'll take our official thinking minute first. Hey, Isaiah, you have a question or idea?
Idea.
Okay, all right. So let's take our thinking minute now. Oh, another question. How do we know this is true? And under what circumstances? Under what circumstances is it true? I mean, if this means that a king won't, betray with his mouth. I mean, anytime you talk about a politician not betraying or not lying, that's a pretty tall order there,
Can I just ask a quick question?
Mhm.
Is it possible that, because I know we have divination, is that like the only, like, is it more like magic divination or is it more like nevuah-y?
Okay, so yeah, so divination, strictly speaking, divination is telling the future, right? So I think if you're gonna take this, I think like that's open for interpretation, you know? Yeah, and that's why I don't like, in fact, I'm gonna delete magic because I think magic is just too vague. Magic can mean so many things. Okay, let's start with my dad.
So just a question. The first part of the pasuk, could we be talking about charisma here? Is this a
That could be. I was wondering about that. Yeah, so maybe charm. Our school said charm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could it affect how he institutes justice? Because when you make a judgment and it may be an unpopular judgment, but if you have that charisma, it's something that will stand or be convincing.
Okay, that's interesting. So perhaps this is commenting on how the unique, I guess, aura of majesty that a king has will affect how his, judgments are received or perceived. Yeah. You have an example in mind?
I have
Or
to
if anyone has an example, I feel the intuition here.
Well, I mean, it could if you could be talking about something like FDR.
That's a good example, right? So example is FDR. I don't know throughout his presidency, but I gotta imagine that at many parts of his presidency, at many points, I mean, you don't get elected 4 times. If you're not,
Maybe more so Churchill.
yeah, FDR, yeah, or Churchill, when they were popular, had
wartime.
Yeah, had a magic-like quality in their proclamations that elicited obedience from, or loyalty, I guess, loyalty from the subjects, their subjects. Yeah. Okay, so can we take this then? So now the question is, who's the audience and what's the practical application here? If we take this approach. And this is not a question just for my dad, but anyone has an idea here?
Just a question on the idea.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing it, but how does it, where's the second half in this?
I think what my dad is saying is that since there is this charm on the king's lips, then his proclamations or his decrees or his judgments will not be betrayed. People will obey them, Yeah, Isaiah?
Yeah, I was thinking I guess as a person who is a follower of this king, don't fall for what there might be a force that's kind of forces you to hear what he's saying and take it into account when maybe it's not good.
Okay, good. So if the audience, that's one possibility. If the audience is the subject of the king, then this is a warning not to be seduced by his charm. And I guess by being aware of this phenomenon, you can guard against it and counteract it. Where you also see this, really anyone who's famous or anyone who's rich has this quality as well. I think, in fact, I would expand it. We asked, what is the quality of king and how broadly does this expand? So I'm going to just add here, according to this interpretation, king can refer to anyone who is in a position of
influence.
Say again?
Influence.
Yeah, influence, but I feel like there's a certain category of larger than life influence. In other words, you would not apply this necessarily to any boss at work or something like that, of what's the word I'm looking for? Position of, I don't want to say celebrity influence, but that's kind of what I'm talking about here. I'll just say larger than life influence. Yeah, okay, good. Ayala, did you have another application?
Yeah, I was gonna say also, besides for just to know to guard against it for yourself, also know that other people will be taking their words very
That's a good
seriously.
point also. Okay, so you can guard against it and counteract it. You should also be aware that other people, that this effect will will extend to other people, and you should be careful to not to get carried away by that mass that mob mentality. Yeah, anyone have an application to the king himself?
Have a what for the king himself?
An application for the king himself, like if this pasuk is talking to the king himself. Yeah, Ayala?
And he should be very careful and intentional about what he says and does, because it will be taken very seriously.
Okay, good. That's a much more noble thing than what I was going to say. Okay, so alternatively, or I guess additionally, the king should be very careful to remember this phenomenon and to not speak, and to be careful with what he says because of its tremendous power. I mean, we saw this, certain presidents got a hold of Twitter, and and not just presidents. I mean, I think one example is Trump. Another example is Elon Musk. That things that they say on Twitter can have huge effects on the whole economy, on the world, and they should be aware of that. I was going to say something else, which is that likewise, a king can use this power to his advantage, and endow his statements with this magical quality, even if the same statement wouldn't be heeded by a normal person. This is more like a Machiavellian type way of using this charm, like it's a tool that the king can use at his disposal. And look, I mean, it doesn't have to be used for sinister purposes. I mean, I think parents, especially with young children, will also have a certain type of charm on their lips that the kid will have a certain trust in what the parent says that might not be warranted, or teachers, or rabbis. And I think these warnings also apply. Like, for the audience, you should also, be wary to not be seduced by the magic. And for the user, you should be aware that your words have a tremendous, influence and power. I have a good example of this. Hold on. Oh, in fact, I think I actually have this on an old blog post. One of my Truman blog posts. Truman. Yeah, okay, here we go. Yeah, this is a story. Okay, so this is from my favorite biography of Truman, plain speaking oral biography of Harry S. Truman. By Merle Miller. In 1964, Eric Severide, in a conversation with Mr. Truman, got on the same subject, and he quoted him as saying, "What you don't understand is the power of a president to hurt." Severide added, "An American president has the power to build, to set fateful events in motion, to destroy an enemy civilization, to win or lose a vast personal following. But the power of a president to hurt the feelings of another human being, this, I think, had scarcely occurred to me, and still less had it occurred to me that a president in office would have the time and need to be aware of this particular power among so many others." Mr. Truman went on to observe that a word, a harsh glance, a peremptory motion by a president of the United States could so injure another man's pride that it would remain a scar on his emotional system all his life. Then Severide recalled an episode that the president had also told me shortly after it happened, in the late winter or spring of 1962. He had given a lecture at, I believe, the University of Southern California, in any case at a college or university in Southern California. The lecture was on the subject of he loved best, the Constitution and the presidency. During the question period, a boy got up and said, "Mr. President, what do you think of our local yokel?" He meant Pat Brown, the governor. Mr. Truman told the boy that he should be ashamed of himself, that to speak of a governor of the state in such a disrespectful way, even if he disagreed with him, was a shameful thing. The boy, close to tears, sat down. When the question period was over, Mr. Truman went to the boy and said that he hoped he would understand that what he had said had to do with the principle involved and that he meant nothing personal. The boy said that he did understand, and the two shook hands. Afterward, Mr. Truman went to the dean to ask him to send reports from time to time on the boy's progress in school. The dean said he would and had. I I asked Mr. Truman if he had ever heard from the boy himself, and he said, he's written me 2 or 3 times and I've written him back. He's doing well. Severed said of the incident, the simple point here is that Mr. Truman had instantly realized how a public scolding by a former president could mark and mar the boy's inner life and his standing in the community. I feel gratified to have heard this story. It has given me an insight into the responsibilities of a president that I did not have, and it has immeasurably added to my own residue of memories about the man from Missouri. Isn't that an amazing? Can you imagine a president doing something like that now? You know, I think with some it's more imaginable than others. But yeah, okay, so that's a good example of how careful the president has to be. Okay, good. All right, so I think that takes care of my dad's. Yeah.
One thing to the pasuk is, I once asked Michael Medved the question: can you be a great political leader without being a good speaker?
Yeah.
Is that the key? A key
so, okay. So that I think is a good approach. And I was in doubt as to whether that is a similar approach or a different approach. Meaning, because I think your approach that you were saying was talking about like the influence that a king's speech has just by virtue of his position. Mm-hmm. And then what you're quoting now is like, in order to be a king, you need to have a certain rhetorical ability, an ability to persuade. So I think that is a good approach. But I would separate that from your current approach. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's go with Isaiah next. Isaiah.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this a little bit differently, but similar also. That maybe the king what he says like can effectively a lot of times become the future. Like his words have the ability to make reality.
Yeah.
So like it's tempting for a person to like listen to what he says and like sort of have in mind like trying to understand what the future is going to be from like what the words of the king are. So like but the king is also, and I was thinking about this originally, I was thinking about this with court cases, but I think it applies beyond into like anything the king says.
Yeah.
Like the king is a master, because this is his job, he's like a master at using his words also, because he all day sits in judgment or sits in like proclamation and like decides what things should be. So like you think that you can understand what the future is in this court case or in the thing that he's deciding, but like he's not going to give it up. He's not going to like betray his words and like some slip and you can figure out what it is. So like you shouldn't think that just because the king decides the future, you can like try to like predict what he's going to say. Kings are like masters and like beyond your ability to like come up with understandings of them.
Okay, so I followed your initial move, and for some reason I'm not following what you're saying now. So first question I just want to ask you here, just to confirm my understanding here, is the audience you're saying is the listener to the king. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then just tell me just how are you reading the second half?
The b'mishpat lo yimal piv means that like, I guess maybe the case is specifically like a court case, is like he's not going to betray his decision early. There's not going to be any hint or like leading into what he's decided. And so
betray. Okay, so you're saying betray like reveal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that I'm not sure if I think that's an English word usage. Of betray. I don't think me'ila can be used to like reveal.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think this is like treachery betray. Like to be a traitor. Yeah. But I like how you started off though. And I think there's potential there.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So you can go back to the drawing board, right? I think we let's keep this on the side burner. Okay. Because I think this is also similar to what my intuition was going off of. So I think there's like there's what to say here. Okay, let's go to Reza next.
All right. I interpreted this completely differently.
Okay.
I thought one must assume that a person with the ability for right judgment or a tzaddik or king will always judge correctly, even if the judgment seems hard to understand. So I'm kind of defining kesem as the ability to give like profound insight into the truth. So like divining or interpreting the truth, giving insight into the truth into like a court case or possibly the future or just what is. And the king will not judge wrongly, even if it seems that way, or even if what he says is hard to understand. So it's assuming that he is a like a righteous person.
Okay,
and
so
a
this is
good
talking
judge.
about a righteous king. Okay, and sorry, the last half you're saying that he,
Yeah.
like, meaning
So
his words are not going to contain anything that is wrong.
right, even if it seems wrong at first listen or it's hard to understand or it's beyond our reach, it's like in time it will become clear.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a different shiur you gave recently where it was like assume the best intentions of a righteous person. I forget which one that was. There's one.
Okay, so you know, it's funny. I think this is a good approach. What I'm tempted to do, and we'll save this for later, but I'm tempted to say, like, there's only one king I know of who this is absolutely true about, and that's God, right? So I think this really fits well if you're talking about God. My question is, and this is not a challenge question, this is just if this is talking about a righteous person or a wise person, why would it specify king? You know, like I do think that this, I think that there is truth to this in terms of like a a wise righteous person, but why king?
I think if king means judge, that's how I started thinking about
Okay,
that.
with judge. Okay, I see. All right, hold on a second here. So righteous king in his capacity as
Just for
judge.
judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and so the audience is the person hearing or receiving the judgment,
Mhm.
and who is suspicious of it.
Mhm.
But he should recognize that the perspective of the king is so far above his own and is more in line with the truth, and probably less biased, and should rely on that in despite his misgivings.
Yeah, I guess this hinges on the word king, like what.
No, yeah, I think that is a good interpretation, and that definitely fits in with Rashi, who said that it's about a what do you call it, a chacham who sits in judgment, right? Yeah. Okay. I just want to think about one more second, and just I feel like there's one more practical step we could pull out of this. So I'll ask this question. I don't think it's a profound question, but like, why would a person be prone to making this mistake?
You misinterpreting the judgment of the king? Or
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it misinterpreting. I mean, because you're really saying that he's like disagreeing with it, right?
yeah, not either not understanding,
Yeah,
interpreting, or thinking it might be too harsh,
yeah,
or just
right.
mistaken.
So
Probably too
what
harsh.
causes a person to make that mistake? Other than, like, ignorance.
If they're ignorant or if they have like a different or less developed set of values or understanding about like the good.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely true. Can't disagree with that one. Let me think if I can be more precise in my question here. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm just gonna say what I'm thinking here because I think this. Once I say it, I can explain why. In fact, I'm gonna quote. Where can I find this? Do I have a translation? Let's look. Let's see if I have a translation of the three groups. Yeah. Okay, so the format is messed up here. Okay, so the Rambam is talking about the way people relate to the words of Chazal, the way people relate to the words of the sages, and he says, hold on, is this really it? I could have sworn he says this. Huh. Okay. Oh, no. Okay, I thought the Rambam says this. The mistake people make when they interpret the words of Chazal is they think that that they can't conceive of someone whose intelligence is qualitatively higher than their own. So So in other words, they think like they're used to talking to their friends, and they assume that the extent of wisdom is what they themselves have been exposed to. So like to be confronted with someone who is operating on a completely different level of development, they'll just project their own thinking onto that person and assume, well, this person can't possibly be coming at this with such a completely different perspective that like I can't even grasp it, you know? So I think like categorically, it's true what you were saying, Reza, that like they lack knowledge of the good, or they lack knowledge of you know, of the law or whatever. But I think the mistake that they make in terms of the reason why they make this mistake with the king is because they just are not open to the possibility that this person could have a completely different, much higher perspective. You know, it's kind of like with I mean, analogously, or maybe this is actually an example, when lay people weigh in on like what medical experts, you know, what like doctors you know, do, and someone who has not gone to medical school or doesn't know anything about reading scientific journals, like just, you know, will weigh in on stuff like that, but not realizing like, yeah, to become an expert in this field, it's a completely different level of thinking. And like, you know, for you to assume that is just arrogant, you know? So I'm going to say that I'll just say one possible cause is that you know, I guess the person receiving the judgment can't conceive of the fact that this king is on a qualitatively superior level of knowledge and understanding. And if he could, you know, grasp that even as a possibility, he wouldn't be so quick to assert his own view. Yeah. Okay, I think that's a good application here. Okay, anything else on this before we go on? Okay, Rifki, go ahead.
Okay, so I think that my thought is actually pretty similar to Reza. I'm not sure, but it's a little different, I think. I was thinking not just like the ability to give profound insight, but more on like, that's what I was asking if I can translate it as like actual like nevuah like type.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking that in order to, I think, get to that position, at least like I'm thinking in like biblical times, you really needed to like be a very like certain kind of person. Like you could, not anyone could just be a king. Obviously there were like actual qualifications, like what Shaven and blah blah blah. But I think like the actual characteristics, like what I was thinking was like, let's say like Moshe, like obviously like he literally separated from his wife, X, Y, and Z. Like there's a lot of things that you need to do in order to make your character have the ability to have that type of nevuah. Okay. So I think that just in terms of the personal development, like that's why the king is able to have like kesem on his lips, which in turn will affect his like judgment, because if you're able to like, I guess, perfect yourself in that way and literally have insight that isn't like a normal type of insight, then like hopefully your actual judgments will be like not just based in reality, but like the actual correct decision and way to go, and not just like a good thought that you had.
Okay, so I think if the pasuk said something like a navi, a prophet, then I would agree with you. I'm a little stuck on the premise here, because in order to become a king, then the one main requirement is that your father is king. You know, like we didn't really have or you kill the king and you become king, you know? Like I think the idea of becoming a king through your merit and through your perfection is like a very modern idea. And yeah, it's true that David and Melech was chosen as king, or Shaul was chosen as king because God chose them based on their qualities, but those were like to start off the dynasty. And then from then on, it's like you're automatically going to be the king if you're the you know, the son of king. So I think the hyper specificity of Melech and the hyper specificity of like Kesem and the broadness of your idea about like someone who is capable of seeing the future based on their perfection, to me, they don't quite go hand in hand. Like I wouldn't go in that direction based on the way that the pasuk is talking about it here. So that's not to say that you can't salvage your idea, but I'm not buying into the premise. The factual premise. Sorry, what was that?
No, I just have to think about it.
Okay, sure, yeah, think about it. Okay, Ariel.
Yeah, I kind of want, I'm not sure if who the king is specifically. I'm not gonna take a stance yet on if it's a righteous king or not, but maybe you could say that the Kasem is on the lips of a melech, which means that the king is able to maybe if you use the word divination in this way, where like he's able to through his logic and through his ability to think things through, he's able to foresee certain outcomes, and he's able to express them as an individual of of a judge or a melech, or however you want to call it, and he's able to convey that information to the people, and lips, I think, is a way of a community communicating that information.
Yeah.
Right. So it could be a tzaddik, it could be a chacham. I don't really know. I don't know if it's necessarily the idea, but in the second half of the pasuk, maybe you could say that like the mouth is representing more of like the king's inner thoughts and actions, and how he, well, not actions, but like his more like within himself, like it's one thing to speak about these ideas, it's another thing to to kind of like, I don't know how else to say it, but I'm gonna use a term like kind of live by them in a sense.
Okay.
Because like some people, they could talk about it, but it's another thing to actually see a melech who speaks one way and actually like act that way within the actual judgment that he puts out there in the world, which is in line with what he speaks.
Okay, so just I think I understand the individual components of what you're saying. Can you just tell me how you're reading the pasuk?
I am well, what do you mean by reading? Like, you mean just like how I'm like
read your idea into the words of the pasuk. I'm just not seeing the connection to the words of the pasuk.
Yeah, so I'm reading like Hasem is an individual who is able to foresee a specific outcome, and which what she wants to convey to the world,
Okay.
as a melech. And Mishpat is where he acts on Mishpat, where he acts on that using his his mouth, which is kind of like more of like an internal where it's in line with what he's portraying, with what he wants to convey, and that's what it means. He's not going to be betrayed. He's going to be.
Let me be more concrete. Could you just read the pasuk in English? How are you reading the pasuk?
I'm not sure. I just have an idea. I'm not sure how to put that within.
Okay. All right. So let me try, because I don't really. I feel like I'm missing something big here. So you're saying that this king can see the future and convey it verbally.
Yeah.
And are you, very basic question, are you saying he shouldn't betray his mouth?
No, I'm saying that the second half of the pasuk is the audience is to the people observing, meaning like based off of his actions or the judgment that he puts out there in the world, you can either tell if it's in line with what he's preaching or not. I mean, if he really wants to convey it, right, he's not gonna betray it.
Do you give me an example? Maybe I'm now I don't even know what you're saying.
I don't know, like, I don't know. I'm running for president. Donald Trump, 2024. I want to lower taxes.
Okay.
Right now, I become president. I am either gonna lower the taxes or I'm not.
Okay.
Right. And let's assume that he, his first term, now based off of his actions during this term, whether he says the truth or didn't say the truth, by acting on it, I'll know if he's a liar or not. I mean, the judgment is putting it into practice.
Right. So what's
It's
the practical,
finalizing the statement that he made as the king.
so what's the practical application beyond if I'm a subject of the king here and the king says something, the pasuk's telling me that in order to tell whether the king is speaking truthfully, I have to wait and see if he implements it. Well, what's the practical?
Yeah, it's so that's the thing. The king and we both have our independent minds.
Yeah.
We both have the capability of thinking. And at a certain point, if you start noticing that his judgment is not in line with what is preaching,
Yeah.
you have to make an assessment whether you kind of have to like think it through. Like the question you have to ask yourself, is this judgment in line with what he's saying or
Okay.
not? And you
Here's
have to
here's
think
what I
about
meant by reading the pasuk. Okay, now it finally clicked. Okay, all right. You have to be again. The test of whether you have an idea is whether it flows from the pasuk, right? So there is a magic-like ability, on the lips of the king, okay, to speak the future, but only if his mouth doesn't betray his statements. Okay, I think you're saying something like that. Okay, meaning that now I still don't know what the practical application is, but now I at least know where you're getting what the connection is for the pasuk, or unless I'm missing it. Is this?
No, that's actually yes.
Okay.
Accurate.
All right, good. So now the question is, what is the practical application? Okay, so you are saying that it's for the listener, for the king's subject. It's for the king's subject. Sorry, it's telling the king's subject that if he wants to know whether the king has this quality, he needs to look at his track record based on previous proclamations about the future, right? And if a king, for example, says, we're going to build a wall and Mexico is going to pay for it, and that doesn't happen, then that should be factored in when evaluating future promises of the king. Is that what you're saying?
I think I'm saying a little bit more than that.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I'm saying that there are two ways, to analyze a king and and anybody in leadership to see, how the future may turn out. And one way is through his actions, and another, no, it's through his actions, but there are two ways of going about it. Looking at the track record, but also looking at the the possible outcomes based off of the decision that he's making. Meaning, like, you have to also, just like he's able to see just like he has this magic-like ability to see the future through his mind, we can also utilize our mind to see if his actions are aligned with what he's preaching. That's going to require your own assessment and your own logic to figure that out. Mm-hmm. So you can't really just you have to take every king with a grain of salt. You can't really, you always have to question it, and you have to always ask yourself, is this judgment in line with what the future can hold, like going through the analysis of the projections of his decision.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is really, really tough. So you notice I changed this. There's a magic-like ability on the lips of the king to speak the future, but only if he doesn't betray the statements of his mouth. So that, I think, works out for the translation. Yeah, I'm not seeing where you're getting that application from in terms of, and I feel like it's just very complicated. That there are two ways to, yeah. All right, think about it some more, and if you can get it clear by the end, then we'll get it down. But at least I know what you're trying to say now, at least a little bit. Yeah, Ben.
All right, so what I've been thinking about is touches on a few of these different things. And interestingly, right, at first I was thinking the same thing, like somehow the king has, like, when they're sitting in judgment, like they have some sort of magical powers. And I was thinking, remember when I was trying to name my children, and Rabbi said to me something like, people, when their parents, when they're naming children, they have nevuah capabilities somehow, like whatever the name is, they stick every. I'm like, okay, but now thinking about it maybe more, rationally. So maybe it's the function. There's a fiat in whatever the lips of the king says in judgment, right? The words of the judgment, like there's the power of fiat. It is what it is because I say it is, right?
Yeah.
But I connect sort of the lips more with the functionality of the words flow, right? And whatever the words, let's say in a legal sense, the judicial opinion, it's the words of the judicial opinion that become law. But there's no significance to the mouth, which is more of what's intended, right? What is the more like the higher brainstem kind of level of function to the whole mouth of what is the thought? What is the whole structure of the decision that
Mhm.
King is trying to convey? And that's where things can go awry, because if the king is trying to get at something but doesn't it's that thing, the idea that they have that they want to convey, right, can be betrayed, right, by the mouth, as opposed to but once they say it, it's fiat, it's the law. So I think that goes a little bit like with Hirsch, and but it's interesting how with Hirsch and the author sort of say, like, who's the audience? My sense is maybe it's a double audience, right? It's it's to the king himself that be careful with your what you're thinking in mishpat, because whatever you say is going to be by fiat, the law, right? You have that magical powers, right? It's not really magic. It's the power of the monarchy of the power. And even if it's not the king himself, it's the lower level judges, right? But they're imbued with that authority, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, so be careful with not to betray your mouth, right? When you're coming out with those things from your lips, but because that becomes judgment. But then with regards to the people, also remember that the king has this fiat thing. So once he says it, it is what it is. Like you can't like distort it for your purposes either.
Okay. For your own purposes either. I'm just going to read what I wrote here. So I wrote, there's a fiat in whatever the king says in judgment. His words make it so. Lips refers to the specific words, whereas mouth implies what is intended by the king. If the king is trying to get at something, it can be betrayed by the specific formulation. One audience is the king. Be careful what you want to say, because whatever you actually say will become reality through fiat, and don't let your lips betray your mouth. Another audience is the people. Remember that once the king says it, you can't distort it for your own purposes either. I'm less clear on the second one, but I like the first idea. And I'm just thinking also that this applies a lot to I'm going to give a very, very lower level example. But last year I had this high school teaching job for the first time, and I used my I had my syllabus, and I basically just used my syllabus from my previous high school job, even though this was a completely different school, completely different format. I'm over Zoom, and I realized I can't change policies mid-year, with very few exceptions. And then this year, I completely overhauled my syllabus now that I've taught for a year, and I've taught remotely for a year, and I really, really, really had to put in a lot of thought to the exact formulation of all my policies and all of the rules, because once I proclaim it, then it is the reality, and I have to make sure that this is really what I want in what I'm what I'm getting at in the formulation. Again, king in a very limited context of like a classroom. Yeah.
Faster.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, good idea. All right, Isaiah, are you coming back with a elaboration on what you?
Yeah, it turns out that I was gonna try to save my idea, and it's Ben's idea.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I was thinking the same thing. I was
Yeah.
like, this is sounding like where Isaiah could have gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the way I would read the pasuk is that, and I think this is slightly different than how we read it, is like the king has the ability to make what the king says has the ability to become the future, is exactly the same. So when he's judging something, he shouldn't like allow his lips to betray that future that he wants to convey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Allow his mouth to betray
mouth.
the future he wants to create. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I had a similar idea. You know what? I just want to see if in my old Mishlei records, if I wrote a summary of this. Because that does ring a bell, but it's possible I never ended up doing this. No, I did not. Okay, fine. Ayala?
Just another thought that I don't think was really touched on yet is
Sure.
maybe from the perspective of like people who are receiving judgment from the king, that you should just know that whatever the king says goes. So like be very, very hesitant to object or to like try to interfere or like I don't know, like that the king has a lot of power and you can be like put to death in a second if you disagree.
Okay, yeah. To interfere or object because the king can create a reality detrimental to you very fast. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what some of the meforshim have to say. I have an idea brewing that is similar to Isaiah's with Ariel's. Give me 1 second. I think I might be able to put these two together. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try this idea here. Okay, I haven't worked it out yet. So I also want to say like Isaiah and Ben that what the king says has this magical ability to become reality. Okay, and again, it's hard for us to imagine because we have checks and balances. But in the olden days, that was really true. Like a king could just like decree something and it'll come true. Okay, however, if the king betrays the reality that he wants to create by making a statement that undermines it, it weakens that power. So that's like an example of this is like Achashverosh, where once he makes a decree, he can't go back on it because that's going to dissolve the authority of the king. And I think that this is true for people in positions of leadership as well, is that if you have a leader, people naturally will ascribe a certain amount of power to the person in a leadership position because they do call the shots. But then the more you switch or undermine your own efforts through further proclamations, then it just weakens the entire ability, and that's why this is similar to Ben's in the sense that like, the king has to be careful. It is a powerful thing that the king has, but he has to be careful not to misuse it in a way where he undercuts it and then loses it. So I'm going to just try writing this out. Again, it really is like a mix and match of several ideas here. So this is my idea, which is, on the one hand, a king has the power to create reality through his speech. Okay, I'm going to say a king or anyone in a high position has the power to create reality through his speech. But in order to do that, in order to maintain that, he has to be careful not to betray his intentions with other proclamations that undermine or contradict or I guess dilute what he said before. If he speaks this way, then it's only a matter of time before he loses all the magic. Yeah, I wrote an article earlier in February when I went to go visit my dad in Florida, and I went back, and it was about this parent who like was trying to like quiet their kid, and they said stuff like, if you make noise one more time, then we're not going to take off. If you speak one more time, then the police are going to come and they're going to take you off the plane. And I'm just sitting here thinking like if this is how the parent is talking like right now, they must do this all the time. And there's no wonder that their kid doesn't listen to them, because if the parent is making these ridiculous claims that are just undercut by reality, why should the kid believe anything? And that's why I'm a big believer in, certainly in the classroom, also in the school, also in organizations. Any rule that is not enforced is not a rule. So if you make a rule, you have to enforce it. And if you don't enforce it, don't treat it as a rule. Like, you can't have it both ways, So it's and that's also why I think changing your policies as teacher midway is a recipe for failure. You're totally undercutting your power if you do that. Okay, let's, in the remaining, I do want to end by 8:30 tonight, but let's see what the meforshim have to say. Okay, and again, I have not really had a chance to go through these. So let's do our three that we usually do: Metzudas, Rבינו, Yona, and מאירי. So Metzudas says, Imre HaMelech Brurim, the statements of a king are clear, ilu haya kesem al sfasav, as if there were a divination charm on his lips. Ki ein davar nichachan me'es HaMelech, for nothing can be hidden from the king. Because all people strive to find favor in his eyes. And for this reason, you'll find someone who Megale Ozen Lahamelach, I don't know exactly how to translate it, idiom, who basically who informs the king about the king about everything. Lezeh, for this reason, lo yimol piv b'mishpato la'aves hadin machmas taus ushgaga. Do not betray, rebel against his speech in his judgment to pervert the judgment on account of error and mistake. I don't know what that last part means, but I like the first part. Yeah. So, what's the main idea here? I just don't know what that last part means, or why he makes the application. So, he's obviously trying to explain the last part. The mishpat lo yimol piv. See, I'll tell you what I think he's doing, just in terms of the way he's reading it. I think actually, let me just state this here. Okay, so this is speculative translation, which is there is a charm on the lips of a king, therefore one should not betray his decree. I think that's the way he's saying it, meaning in his judgment, b'mishpat, in the king's judgment, lo yimol piv, he, meaning the audience, should not betray the king's decree. So let's go with that, unless you have another interpretation, then we'll get the main idea. Yeah, Isaiah?
Well, maybe the one thing in the end is don't think the king might be able to be tricked by some kind of mistake in what he said, because he has all of the facts. He's not going to have any sure.
So for some reason, the audio, the combination of the plane going over and how far away you are from the microphone made me not hear the beginning of the audio.
Can you hear me better now? Maybe?
Not so much.
Not sure. Okay, one second.
Okay, sure. I just didn't miss the first part of what you said.
Okay, so maybe yeah. So maybe what the king, what the second half is saying is that the king has all the facts. So don't think that you might be able to go against what he said because you were missing some kind of fact about something, and I can just do something different than what you said because you didn't know what you were talking about. No, he knows everything. And
okay, so the king made some sort of mistake. Yeah. Okay, so again, I see this as I see this all the time, getting behind the scenes glance into the administration of the school that I'm at. Is many times the principal will say a rule or make a decision, and the kids will complain, but they don't have all the facts, and the head of the organization does, and there's good rhyme and reason for why they're saying that. Yeah. Okay, so I do think that that's a true idea. The thing that I think leads me to believe that it's not exactly okay. Okay, so I think maybe you could read the Metzudas David like that. I think Isaiah is reading it as though these other people all want to find favor in the king's eyes, so they will give him all the facts, and therefore when he makes a judgment, then there's not going to be any mistake in it. The way I'm reading it is, if you think you can conceal something from the king, then someone's going to tell on you. Someone's going to tell on you. Think, if you want an extreme example, think Stalinist Russia. Soviet Union. I mean, like the king is going to find out because everyone wants to curry favor with the king. And look at Mordecai. Mordecai, informed on Big Simon and Sarish, and it was recorded in the books, and he got favor in the king. Everyone really wants that, right? So don't think you can hide from the king. The only weakness in my argument is what is that last sentence doing here? I just don't understand what he's getting at. See, what does that mean? Lo yimal piv b'mishpato la'aves hadin machmas taus ushgaga. I mean, maybe you could apply what Isaiah is saying, is that if you try to violate one of the king's rules and you like schemingly try to make it seem as though you were just in error and like you didn't know, or like you violated by mistake, there are going to be people who know why you did it, that this was not a mistake, and you won't be able to trick the king. Let me write the part that I'm convinced about, and then we'll see if it has any gaps in it, which is that there's a temptation to think you can violate a law and trick the king into saying that you were mistaken. In reality, you shouldn't rely on this, because the king has many agents trying to curry favor with him, and they will report on you and expose your deception. What do you think? Again, I'm not so happy about the last part. I don't know if we use that expression la'aves hadin machmas taus ushgaga fits into you violating the law. Yeah, Ayala?
Can it be that instead of like the person would be trying to trick the king and saying that like be careful that you're not even like slipping up and making a mistake in something that goes against the king, because everyone like you'll be told on.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. That you can violate the law, or even make a mistake and get excused. Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right, let's go into Ravina Yona, see what he says. And now this is the ChatGPT translation, which I have not read yet, so I can't vouch for it. I'm going to read and translate on my own, as I usually do. Kilu kesem al sifsei melech l'hakir es balei adin eze yiton emes ve'eze yiton sheker. So again, this is, I think, king in the capacity of judge. It's as if there's magic on the lips of the king to be able to tell of the litigants which one is claiming truth and which one is claiming falsely. Really? Okay. The mishprat liyom apiv shlo yachtoch din meruma. The king will not enact a false judgment. Ki pa'amim she'ein latovim edim. Sometimes those who are bringing the suits, the litigants, will not have witnesses. Va'shoftim potrin es hanitba l'sheker. And therefore, the judge will exempt the person who is making a false claim. But a king who wants to judge righteously, it's not his way to stumble in this. Because out of fear, the litigant will not make a false claim in front of him. Sheker yiton yivakish davar, because if he makes a false claim, then he will investigate the matter of yimtza ki ove melech rabim. Oh, now it's like going like the Mitzvahs David, that the king will, many people are the friend of the king, and he'll find out the truth. In Shinemar, as it says, gam b'manda'acha melech al tekalel. Also, it says in Koheles, even when you're in your I think Mada'acha here is in your innermost chambers. Don't curse the king. A winged creature will tell the matter. Okay, meaning that the truth can get back to the king. Amar achimat leYoav o asisi benafshi sheker b'chol davar lo nichach min hamelach. I don't really know the story, but he's saying, did I conduct myself falsely? Nothing is hidden from the king. V'im ad ela lo yatzah hatzedek laor. Hashem Yisrael Asher Himlich as Hamelech Nosin lo bilvavo lahakir as tainos hamramai gam yakshileho alav lashono v'yivchan. Okay, how did this translate this? Despite all this, if justice does not come to light, the blessed God who appointed the king, grants him insight to recognize the deceitful claims, and he will cause the deceiver to stumble in his own words, exposing him. Okay, Rבינו Yona is positing hashgacha here, but okay, but the main idea seems to be, is you might be able to trick a regular judge, but the king has many people who want to find favor with him, and they'll tell him the truth. So don't try to lie. So it's funny, Ayala, the idea that I had for the Metzudas David, I guess I was really intuiting something like what the Rבינו Yona I'm saying, because I was saying it's specifically someone trying to trick the king. And so, again, Metzudas David we can't really tell, but Rבינו Yona is definitely saying that. Yeah, Isaiah? Isaiah? I don't know if you're not able to unmute. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
How are they reading the pasuk? Rבינו Yona and the one before?
Yeah, so I still think that they're reading it. There's a charm in the lips of the king, therefore one should not betray his decree. Meaning that you, the audience of Mishlei, should not try to trick him.
The charm on the lips of the king is the people who want to come and tell him things.
Yeah, like he can always tell the truth because people will tell him what the truth is. I don't know why it's on the lips of the king. I think it's like on the ears of the king or something.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very weird thing. Yeah. I don't know why. Yeah, because you look at the way, especially the way Rבינו Yona says it, Kilu kesem al sifsei melech lahakir es balei adin, to recognize the litigants. I guess it's because he's gonna make a true pronouncement. Like he'll always know when you're telling the truth. I mean, look at the Shlomo case is a good example of that. Is he used psychology to know who was lying, and it was like magic. I mean, it impressed everyone a lot. Yeah. Okay, let's do the last batch here in the Meiri. Again, this is ChatGPT, so I don't know if this is right. Kesem al sifsei melech. Okay, fine. He'ara hamonis. This is an everyday lesson. Lihishamer milavor al mitzvos melech. That a person should guard against violating the laws of the commandments of the king. Mikol ma'aseh hanoda michuko onsho alav im yagia la'ozen hamelech. Since any action hanoda mechuko, what does that mean? Known to be against the law, onsho alav, meaning that is known to be punishable, might reach the melech. And don't rely on denying the matter. Kikesem al sifsei melech, because there is a charm in the lips of the king. Kikesem ukenevua lahakir hadavarim v'libos amitasam. Okay, it's like magic and prophecy. Sorry, like divination and prophecy to recognize the matter, v'libun amitasam, and to discern its truth. Nothing is hidden from the king. So that's very much like the Rבינו Yona and the Metzudas David. Okay. Some say it's a lesson to the king to judge justly, and without any deviation from justice. The kesem hu nemar al gezeros hakochavim. Okay, kesem is a reference to astrology. Just as an astrologer declares the judgment of the stars in a definitive statement, so too it's proper for the king to know the truth of the matter clearly. And then he should make the judgment, so that his mouth does not betray justice. It's weird to compare this to an astrologer, especially for the Meiri. I don't think the Meiri believes in astrology. So the question would be like why use the metaphor of an astrologer, especially since astrologers tend to be vague and not reliable? That it's just a weird idea. Okay, I don't know. I want to do this derech nister though. I'm hoping that we get something for Rosh Hashanah. Okay, u'v'derech nister hu nikshar ima pasuk shalafanav. Oh, so this is connected to the pasuk before it. That says Hashem will establish his footsteps. Let's actually look and see what the Meiri said on that, because I don't remember if we even did that. Oh, did I not? We did do this pasuk last week, right? I'm not crazy. Okay, yeah. So I don't know where my notes are. Meiri says, okay, so he says that a person's mind should investigate things by way of proof. The im kozeh, but nevertheless, yasim hatal lenochach panav. You should place God before you. Lahachin tzado b'hayisharaso be'emunos b'mish ena yad hamovis magas. So that's basically what we said, is that in areas that you could prove stuff rationally, you should. But in areas where you can't, you should rely on the Masorah and not just go all in on figuring stuff out with your own mind. Because not everything can be proven. Okay, so then he says here, this is connected. Ukraha chacham hashalim melech. So it's calling a perfected chacham a king. Kinyan ki bi malachim imlochu. Like it says in Mishlei, through me kings reign. V'hishiru lekabel devarav. And it's warning you to accept his words, af b'mesh ein yad hamofes magas, even in areas that that cannot be proven. Ki'ilu kesem al sfas, as if there's divination on his lips. V'shiyeda ki lo yimal piv b'mishpato v'limuda. And you should know that he's not going to betray his mouth in, I think judgment would be better, judgment and learning. Okay, so the main idea here is so the subject is what we call emunas chachamim, which means trusting in a chacham even if you don't understand it with your own mind. Okay, and it's saying that the king is the perfected chacham. Okay, so it's not just any chacham, but a perfected chacham. And the idea is that you should rely on the chacham in areas that can't be proven. Yeah. So the question here, I mean, what's the chiddush, right? What is the new insight here? What is the chiddush? New insight. We know that it makes sense to rely on experts when you lack that expertise, and in areas that can't be proven. So let's say, for example, I'm going to use a contemporary example, not in the realm of philosophy. A doctor who is confronted with a case that people know very little about, okay, it makes sense to rely on the expert's intuition. Okay, so the question is like, what is, why is this necessary? Why is this pasuk necessary? What is the Hava Amina? And you could tell me that there is no Hava Amina. You could say that, no, this is just the idea that he's telling you, but I feel like I demand more with Meiri. Okay, I'm gonna attempt something here. I don't know if this is the only answer, but I think there is a. Okay, so I think because the average person doesn't fully appreciate that not everything can be proven with absolute certainty. Okay, actually, I'm gonna stop and read a Freud quote for a second to support this, because I think he says it really well. Wall quotations. Freud. Yeah, okay, so this is from the introductory lectures on psychoanalysis. He says, it would be a mistake to suppose that a science consists entirely of strictly proved theses. That's THESES for those who can't hear. And it would be unjust to require this. Only a disposition, meaning a personality with a passion for authority, will raise such a demand. Someone with a craving to replace his religious catechism by another, though it is a scientific one. Okay, so in other words, if the only person who is going to demand of science that everything be absolutely proven is someone who basically wants to have a religious relationship with science, who wants to have like faith in science. Okay, Science has only a few apodictic propositions in its catechism. I think apodictic means that is like incontrovertibly true. Apodictic, clearly established or beyond dispute. Okay, fine. Science has only a few apodictic propositions in its catechism. The rest are assertions promoted by it to some particular degree of probability. It is actually a sign of a scientific mode of thought to find satisfaction in these approximations to certainty and to be able to pursue constructive work further in spite of the absence of final confirmation, right? So this was a big problem during COVID, right? Because the average person actually, this is an example of two ideas that we had. So scientists, obviously, during COVID were confronted with a new phenomenon, and they changed things, and the average person thought that, oh, this means they don't know what they're talking about, because I thought science is supposed to be 100%, and they're changing their mind. So that it's not science, it's a government conspiracy, So like, that's just not understanding how science works. Science, especially like breaking news science, is always constantly updating. But you see that people related to science as if it had a charm on its lips, and the more times the policies changed, it took away all the magic, So that's a reality as well. Okay, but going back to the meiri here. So now I think what I'm trying to say here is like, let me just make this, just want to have this on record here. Okay, so what I want to say is like this, is because the average person doesn't fully appreciate that not everything can be proven with absolute certainty, they unjustly demand absolute certainty, proof, certainty and logical proofs from chachamim. Okay, in reality, not everything can be proven 100%, and each area must okay, hold on, another quote to support this. Internet classic archives, Aristotle, Nicomachean ethics, and Engel. Okay, so he's talking about ethics and how you have to you don't have rigid proofs in ethics. So he says, and we must also remember what has been said before. This is in Nicomachean Ethics 1:7. We must remember what has been said before and not look for precision in all things alike, but in each class of things, such precision as accords with the subject matter, and so much as is appropriate to the inquiry. For a carpenter and a geometer investigate the right angle in different ways. The former, the carpenter, does so insofar as the right angle is useful for his work, while the latter inquires what is or what sort of thing it is, for he is a spectator of truth. We must act in the same way, then, in all other matters, that our main task may not be subordinated to minor tasks. Yeah, okay, so in other words, each subject has its own criteria and levels of achievable certainty. Okay, so so the thing is for this reason, someone relying on a chacham may not fully trust him if he can't prove it. Okay, and but this is a mistake. This is a mistake. The intuition of a chacham is more in line with the truth than your misguided, ignorant feelings about how the truth should be. Okay, yeah. So this, again, this is a clear, this is like what I was pointing out with Race's example about why would a person not rely on a wise king? It's because they're imposing their own level and projecting it onto the chacham. So here too, it's like, well, in my world, I want absolute certainty, and I naively think that I can get absolute certainty in every area, so that chacham must have absolute certainty. But no, that's not the case, and so don't project your standards onto the chacham. Okay, well, that was certainly an interesting pasuk. Let's review what we have. So we had my dad's idea, which is that the king has a certain charisma from his position, and if you are a subject of the king, you've got to be aware not to be charmed by it, and be aware that others will be charmed by it, and you have to analyze the words on their own. You have to disregard the celebrity influence. And then if you're a king, you have to be aware that your words, people are going to relate to your words with this charm. This is one reason why, like, surrounding yourself with yes men is very bad, that people are going to be more inclined to say yes to you. So you should surround yourself with your enemies, like Lincoln did with what was his cabinet was people who were all of his opponents, so that's my dad's idea. Race's idea was it's talking about a righteous king who judges properly, and you might have your misgivings about it, but you should rely on his judgment. And now we have the Meiri who kind of gives us the mechanisms for why that's correct. And you should not project your own level of intelligence onto the king. Ariel's idea that we got out of Ariel had to do with the king can speak the future, but his mouth might betray that. And we just didn't figure out the full implications here. Ben's idea was that the king's mouth can create reality. Sorry, the king's lips can create reality, meaning the exact formulation, but the exact formulation is what becomes reality. But what he wants to say, he should make sure that that doesn't betray it, or because it's funny. His speech is an expression of his intentions, but once the king speaks, it takes on a life of its own, and you can't treat your intentions as the real thing. It's what you actually say that's going to matter. Isaiah had a similar thing as well, which is that with the application that you can't. The king himself should be careful not to undermine the future he wants to create. And that was like my idea as well, is that a king can create reality through his speech, like magic, but the more he betrays his own mouth, then the less that magic is going to happen. So there's like an implied but there. And then the Metzudas David and Rבינו Yona both had ideas about trying to weasel your way out of a king's judgment or violating a law, and saying, no, the king will know about it. And then like what I also said is you're going to get caught and it's going to be bad because the king has absolute power. But the main thing is that the king has the magical ability to declare what is true because everyone is informing him of everything. So don't try to like deny it. And then Meiri said an idea we didn't understand about the divination, and then this idea about the Chacham not projecting your own standards onto the Chacham. Okay, well, what we did not get is I thought that there's going to be someone who applied this to Hashem, the king. I mean, the closest thing we got was Race's idea and Meiri's Derek Nister idea. I thought we were going to get a Rosh Hashanah idea, but maybe we'll just have to wait till next week and the week after and the week after and the week after with all these pasukim about kings. So yeah. In fact, you know what? I think someone actually quotes this next pasuk for something about Rosh Hashanah. Maybe I'm imagining that, but anyway, because it's talking about the Monday Night Mishlei. Okay, we'll have to see. Our next one doesn't even say king, whatever. But still, the Hashem's kingship is always a relevant theme, so we'll always be thinking about it, God willing. Okay, all right. Thanks for coming, and have a good night and a good Rosh Hashanah and a good Shana. If I don't see you, all right. Bye.
Thank you. You too.